If you're thinking about purchasing a property and you're wondering what the process is, well, this video is for you. There are many ambitious Australians that are looking to purchase property but don't actually know where to start. So today we're going to be discussing how to actually purchase a property, how to actually save enough money, but also what the process is. It is a lengthy process, so please don't get discouraged. One of the biggest things that I try to make sure that I encourage everybody to realize is that it takes a long time. Buying property isn't something that happens quickly. It doesn't happen overnight. Even if you have enough deposit, even if you have enough income coming through to be able to get finance, it actually takes a really long time to find the house that you want. So even if you look at what is available on the market right now, you might find a house that you think is fantastic, but when you actually go and look at it in person, you may find that the real estate agent's photographer did a fantastic job. It might be that the actual rooms are really small, or it's got a weird funky smell because maybe, I don't know, there was a cat that was left inside for too long and it's really unsettling, something you perhaps would really struggle to actually deal with. So there's lots of different things, and there are a lot of the reasons why you actually just need to go out and have a look at a whole lot of different properties because it's gonna take time. Most people, they're not looking at properties all the time. You're not spending all of your time looking at properties, going to as many inspections as you possibly can. But here's the thing, if you go to as many open homes as you possibly can, I'm talking during the week, I'm talking multiple on the weekends, then it is something that if you put your mind to it, you could find a property within 30 days or so, and then potentially have settlement 30 days later. But that isn't the norm. That is definitely the outliers. It's very rare that it actually happens that way. So I'm here to tell you, don't be discouraged. It takes time. So let's walk through the process so that you actually have a really clear idea of all the different steps that are actually involved. And that way, as you're going through each of the different steps, you know what comes next, and that will help you to prepare. It will help you to feel less stressed in the process, and it'll help you to actually know that you are making progress. So before you start down the path of actually looking for that perfect home, whether it is a $3 million property by the ocean, or perhaps it's a smaller 1.5 mil townhouse that's in a city, whatever the property looks like, you actually need to work out the destination. So you want to know what you're aiming for. And one of the easiest ways is to determine actually what is it that you're trying to aim for. So often you might decide that you want to buy a new house. You might be living in an apartment currently and you actually want to change it up a bit. You now want to live in a townhouse or in a big standalone house. And so the best way for you to actually get a feel of what it is that you're aiming for is to actually go and have a look. So here, I want people to actually go out. I want you to step out of realestate.com or out of Domain and all the lists that you've got within those apps, and actually start to attend some open for inspections. Attending open for inspections and actually walking through some of these properties will really give you a better idea on whether that's actually something that you want to be achieving. So actually setting that goal of, this really is what I'm after, this property is what I'm after, or in this area, living in this suburb is really what I want to be doing. Those things, they're all going to help you to create a clearer picture in your mind and to be able to give you the goals that you need so that you can actually build towards something specific. We find you will always do better if you are aiming for a clear, specific goal as opposed to just something ambiguous. So actually determining what that goal looks like. What does that house look like? What does that apartment look like? You may not find the specific one, and that's okay. Like I said, this takes time. But we do want you to have a really good idea of what is it that you actually like. Do you like blue kitchens? Or do you want to live near a park? Do you want to live near shops? For me personally, I like to live near coffee shops. I like to go walking every day to go get a coffee and then come back again. So for me, actually living near cafes is important for me. But for other people, you might want that rural life. Perhaps you want to have chickens and you need a little bit more space for that. Or perhaps you've got 4 dogs, so you want to have a little bit more space for that as well. These are all personal choices that we need to work out and decide when trying to find that right property. So get out there, have a look at a few different properties that really are of interest to you and find out whether when you walk through those properties and whether you walk around those neighborhoods, whether they are still of interest to you. So let's say you now have a pretty good idea of what you'd actually like to buy in a property. So you've got a rough idea of the type of property that you want to buy, and you've probably also, just from looking online and speaking to a few different real estate agents, you've got an idea around how much what you would like will actually cost. So here's the next thing. Next, we need to work out if you've got enough savings in place. This is where we start to play around with the numbers, and we're going to get into a little bit more detail. So if you want to put this video onto 2x speed, go ahead, I won't be offended. In working out your savings, as a general rule, you want to aim for having at least somewhere between a 10 and a 20% deposit. If you've purchased property before, you also want to include purchasing costs. Purchasing costs are things like stamp duty, any land registration, transfer fees, mortgage registration, or any of those government costs. We want to actually include those as part of your deposit as well. So you've got 10 to 20% of your deposit to purchase the property or whatever price that is. And then we also have purchasing costs. If you don't know what your purchasing costs are, a quick tip is to jump onto the State Revenue Office website for the state that you're looking to purchase in. Most of them have a calculator that you can go through, and you can quickly see on those calculators how much you'll then be paying in stamp duty, if any at all. After that, you then want to add probably another about $5,000 to cover other incidental costs in association with those government fees. Once you've got that figure and you know what you're aiming for, the next thing is to work out how far away are you to having that amount of money. So again, I'd say there's probably 3 different ways that you're going to come across working out whether you've actually got these funds in some form. The first one is equity. You might have equity in a property if you already own property that you can actually take out and use as a deposit. The second one is shares. If you've got a share portfolio, you may actually have enough in shares and you may be interested in selling those shares for that to then form part of your deposit. The third thing is then actual savings. You might actually have a bank account with cash in that bank account. Let's, for the sake of this video, assume that what you're looking at is having enough savings in a bank account. So here with savings in a bank account, we have covered budgeting, we've covered investing and minimizing costs before, but let's recap. So to be able to boost those savings, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. One is you can set up automatic savings transfers so that whenever you get paid, a certain amount moves across into a savings bank account and it happens automatically so you don't really feel the pain of that. The other option is you may then be looking to invest. If you're thinking that when you want to purchase isn't for another few years, 5-10 years, you may actually decide, I'm going to put some of this money into the stock market and I'm going to hope that the market does what the market does and that money will actually grow over time. There is that option. The other thing you can do is you can always minimize expenses, keeping in mind there's only so far you can go before you're eating eggs and toast and peanut butter on toast all of the time, and that is not much fun at all. So don't go too extreme on the minimizing expenses, but it will help you to boost your savings. So as you take the time to work out where are you at now, where do you need to be with your savings, actually putting a plan in place, or at least changing the name on your bank account so it says the goal of how much money you need in that bank account before you have enough cash for that deposit. So tracking your expenses on a day-to-day basis will help you. It'll also help you to make sure that you're not letting your expenses get carried away. And why you might think this is something that you're only going to do while you're trying to save enough money to be able to purchase a property, let's keep in mind that once you've got the property, you also want to be building up your savings buffer again, because if anything breaks within the property itself, you're better off having cash to be able to fix it. The other thing is you want to be able to have that skill developed, so once you do have that property purchased, you can actually then pay off that loan faster, because the reality is it shouldn't take you 30 years to actually pay down a mortgage. If it takes you 30 years to pay down a mortgage, you're doing something wrong. But that's why we're here. That's why we have this channel, so that you can actually reach your financial goals faster and be part of that elite group of people that ultimately do become debt-free. You'll thank me later. If you're in the top 5% of income earners in Australia, it perhaps will take you not as long to be able to save enough of a deposit that you actually need to be able to purchase the type of house that you're looking for. However, let me still say that even if you are earning $300,000 a year or more, then you still have to be mindful of your expenses, and you do still have to be mindful of what debts you actually have. I'm talking buy now, pay later. That's Afterpay, it's Zip Pay, it's all the other ones. And it does mean that even though you have more income coming through, you're perhaps a little bit more enticed to spend more of it. So still, please set up that automatic transfer so that you actually will get to that saving goal faster. The faster you get to it, the better position you'll actually be in. Next, we want to actually look at how property markets change over time. So at the start of COVID, we actually saw a massive surge in the cost of property. Property prices went up, they went sky high through the roof, and a big part of it came down to supply and demand. Supply and demand influxes and changes property prices across the board. It isn't a new economic trend or anything like that, but it does mean that once you have your deposit ready to go, plus purchasing costs, then you will actually be in a position where you can take advantage of market trends. And the more you have saved, the better positioned you're going to be when getting finance and negotiating for a property. So don't disregard how much you actually put in savings. Really try to aim for as much as you possibly can. And keep in mind what's happening with the market. So as property prices go up and down, and at the moment it's July 2023, and property prices are starting to go down a little bit. Are they going to go down further? Who knows? Nobody can tell. But there isn't any point in trying to time the market, especially when you're trying to purchase a property that you're going to live in for an extended period of time. You could try and time the market, but in the same way as trying to time the stock market, it's a futile endeavor. Focus on what it is that you really want in a property. Focus on finding the best possible price that you can find for your particular circumstances and seeing whether you can actually afford it that way. It's very rare that somebody's going to turn around 20 years after purchasing a property and say, oh, I wish I purchased the house down the road. It doesn't really happen. So focus on what it is that you actually want. So you now have your savings in place. You're still very motivated. You've been checking out different properties all over the place. You've narrowed down the suburb that you want to live in. You've narrowed down the type of property that you want, whether it's a big house, you want a mega mansion, whether you want a property by the ocean or near trees, not close to public transport, close to a school, within a particular school zone, whether it's going to be a townhouse, an apartment, or a unit, or just a standalone house. You've started to actually work all of these things out and you've got a pretty clear idea of what you're going to be doing. So you've got your savings. Now let's actually talk about the process of purchasing. There are 5 main steps that actually happen as part of the process of purchasing. So the first one is research. You've hopefully already been doing this as part of just sussing out what it is that you're ultimately trying to go for as your goal. Then we've got number 2. Now this is where I mostly come in. This is actually getting all of your numbers ready. So this is where you would speak to your bank or preferably to a mortgage broker, because a mortgage broker will look at the whole market in terms of mortgages and what's available and what's going to suit your specific financial needs. But you've had a chat to them. You've gone over all of your documentation, all of the different things that the banks look at to make sure that they understand what it is that your income is, how you secure your income, and how much you're spending on your living expenses, as well as determining what it is that your borrowing capacity is going to be. They've hopefully then also given you a bit of an indication of what's your borrowing capacity going to be if interest rates go up or down. Now, depending on what's happening in the market and the type of property that you're looking to purchase, you may get pre-approval or you may not. This often comes down to what's happening in the market, but also it comes down to where are you actually up to in the process. So if you haven't looked at a whole lot of different properties and you're working out your numbers, but you don't have much of an idea of what's available in the market to purchase, then you're probably too early on in the process for getting pre-approval. Pre-approval only lasts for 3 months, so it's not something that really you want to be getting if you haven't already looked at a lot of different properties. Step number 3 is house hunting. So this is where you take all of that research, all of the inspections that you've actually already been going to, and you take it up a notch. Once you have a really clear understanding of what your budget is, at that point, you want to actually start to really narrow down what your search list is when you are house hunting. Here's where you're going to more inspections. You're potentially putting in an offer on a property, or you're looking at a Section 32. So you may get a copy of the Section 32 from the real estate agent for a couple of houses that you really like. You're then going to take those contracts to your solicitor who does conveyancing, and they'll actually go through that contract and tell you if there is anything untoward about this particular property. If the property is part of an apartment complex or a unit complex where there's owners corporations, they'll actually go through all of that as well, and they'll give you a lot of information around that. They look at things like easements, if there's other caveats on the property, if there's certain other red flags that you need to be made aware of before you put in an offer. So that happens as part of the house hunting process, when you're really starting to get into the gear of we are looking, we are searching, we're very clear on our numbers, we are very serious. We are requesting copies of the contract of sale from real estate agents. We're actually then having those reviewed by our solicitor or conveyancer, and we're starting to really get a sense of this is what's out there, this is what you're comfortable with, here are some additional red flags that you need to be mindful of, all of those things. Because let's remember, this is a process. And like I said right at the very start, this is a process that takes time. Don't get discouraged, it takes time. So now we're up to the fun part. This is where we're actually at the point where we are making an offer. Now you might be thinking, well, hold on, making an offer, it's not that hard. Yes and no. By the time you get to the stage where you are making an offer, there are still more things that you need to be mindful of. And one of the big things here is that while you might make an offer, the vendor doesn't have to accept your offer. Just because you make an offer the seller can turn around and say, no, we don't agree with the terms of your offer. Now, the terms might be that you require finance clause. They might be that you want to do a building and pest inspection. It might be that you want certain works completed to the property before you actually take the property over. There are a lot of things that can actually be part of the terms of that offer that you're presenting. But one of the big things is that keep in mind, while you might put in an offer, you may not actually get it. And more often than not, in the last 10 years that I've been doing this, I've had 2 clients that have had their offer accepted on the very first property they've put an offer in on. So it isn't common, it is very rare. Keep this in mind when you're putting in offers, because you're going to find that actually you're going to put in multiple offers. And as you put in each offer, you're going to learn a little bit more. You're going to understand the process a little bit more. So as part of your making an offer, this is also where you negotiate on the price. So a property may be in an advertised range. It might say, from 4 to 4.5, and you may be looking at it going, actually, this property is only worth 3.8 mil. So I'm going to put in an offer of 3.8 and see what the vendors or the sellers come back with, and further negotiate from there. This is where you also want to understand what are the reasons why the vendor is actually selling that property, because that might help you to tailor your offer so that your offer is one that they will consider and hopefully they'll accept. If this sounds a little bit daunting to you, don't stress. We've got a 5 top negotiating tips to help you actually win your property purchase. I'll make sure I put a link in the bio below so you can actually check it out, but it is well worth the read. So lastly, we then come through to your settlement. So as part of making an offer, the offer is then accepted. As part of getting ready for settlement, there's a few pretty big things that have to happen. One of them is that we actually have to make sure that your finance is approved. So this is where your finance approval goes in, your application goes off to the bank. The bank will then actually do their own valuation of the property. So while you have actually assumed and you've negotiated a particular price for the value of that property, the bank actually then has an independent valuer go out and inspect the property. They will then use their professional opinion to determine whether what you have paid on that contract is fair market value, or whether perhaps you've overpaid or underpaid for that particular property. That happens as part of your home loan approval, and that's getting ready for settlement. So once you've got your home loan approval, then it's time for preparing for settlement. Now, the preparation of settlement means that you're actually going to be spending more time working with your solicitor or your conveyancer to prepare a lot of the documents. You're going to be signing mortgage contracts, you're going to be signing titles documents, you're going to be getting everything ready so that the property itself at settlement, on the day of settlement, is going to get transferred from the vendor's name into your name. Now, that is a legal process that happens, and it is something that your solicitor or your conveyancer will mostly do. But what they're also doing is they're going to be coordinating with all of the different parties that are involved in that property settlement. You might be thinking, how many people can really be involved in the settlement of a property? Well, actually, there's quite a lot. So you're going to have your mortgage broker, you're going to have your bank's solicitor, you're going to have your solicitor, you're going to have the vendor's solicitor, you're going to have the vendor's finance company, whether that is a bank or some other institution. So your conveyancer is the person that they manage a lot of that process. They make sure that your settlement happens on time. They are the ones that is coordinating everything with the vendor or seller's side of things to make sure they have everything ready on their side. So now that we've actually equipped you with all the different advice on just the purchasing process, let's actually talk about some of the different professionals that you're actually going to need to use to be able to get this process done. Because you're not going to do it by yourself. Don't worry, don't stress. You're actually going to have a team of professionals around you that are all going to help. You're not going to be left in the lurch. It isn't something that you're going to have to go to your friends and family and say, hey, what do I do? you're going to have a team of professionals that do this every single day who'll be able to guide you through the process. So as much as we're guiding you right now at a very high level, once you actually start the process, you're going to be working with a team of professionals that will actually go through the nitty-gritty that's specific to you and specific to your personal financial situation and the type of property that you're looking to purchase as well. So let's talk about those different professionals. So there are 5 different professionals that you might decide to engage. Not all of them are required, but some of them definitely are, to actually help you with the buying process. So let's dive in and actually just check out who they are. First up, we have a buyer's agent. Now, a buyer's agent is a person that will actually do a lot of the searching and refining of that property list for you. So instead of you going to a lot of inspections and checking different properties out, working out what's good, what's not good, they actually do a lot of that stuff for you. They also do a lot of other research around the particular property, the area of the property. They look at it from a more long-term perspective to see whether the type of property you're looking to purchase is actually going to perform for you over the long run, so that when you ultimately decide to sell that property, you're actually going to do really well financially in selling that property. Now, that doesn't mean that a buyer's agent is something that you have to use. They do come at a cost, but it is something that if you want to use a buyer's agent, really just to help speed up the process of finding the right property to purchase, they are a fantastic option. Now, I would give you a word of warning here, and that is that you want to make sure that you're dealing with a reputable buyer's agent. Now, there are lots of different buyer's agents out there. One of the key things I would say is steer clear from anybody that's trying to sell you some kind of off the plan, mass area, new development style property. It's not going to potentially end well. You're going to have more red flags and more headaches from a lot of different areas if you go down that path. But that being said, a buyer's agent, generally speaking, will actually help you to be able to purchase a great property and one that you'll be able to actually get into that little bit quicker. Next up, we have a mortgage broker or a bank, and they will help you to secure the extra money that you need to be able to purchase a property. So unless you have enough money sitting there in your bank account, and maybe you've had an inheritance so you can, to be able to purchase it without any debt whatsoever, a mortgage broker or a bank, they're going to provide you with the debt that you need to be able to make that final payment. Then we have a lawyer. The lawyer is the one that is often a solicitor or a conveyancer. They're the person that ultimately transfers the property from the seller or vendor's name into your name. They're the ones that go through all of the legal process to be able to make that all happen for you. We then also have an inspector. Now, a property inspector or a property valuer, they are the person that is going through the property on the bank's behalf, but you'll also use a building and pest inspector to be able to check the property out before you actually purchase it. These people spend most of their time checking to see whether there's termites, whether there's mold, whether there's water issues with the property, to really make sure that the property is being built well, because you want to make sure that when you take over the property, you don't have any huge unforeseen renovation costs. Maybe a burst water pipe has happened in the roof and it's already slowly leaking, but if nobody checks the roof, you may not know about it. Lastly, we have insurance. Now, your insurance provider needs to provide you with building insurance. It is a requirement for your settlement. And it really means that from the bank's perspective, for that first 12 months and hopefully going forward, the property is insured. So if anything happens, you're able to pay out your mortgage, but also you're able to then repair any damage that has happened to the property as well. Because while the property is your security and it's where you're going to be living, it's also what secures the mortgage too. So the bank wants to make sure it's protected as well. And this is where insurance becomes important. Hopefully you found this video exceptionally helpful and you've taken a whole bunch of notes. I'll also be providing a few different links in the comments below so that you can actually go and find resources to be able to help you to actually get through this process, because like I mentioned right at the start, it's a long process and it takes time. So don't stress if you've already been down this path for a couple of months now. You likely have, but Just keep staying on the course. You'll get there, and it does take time. Patience is key. It's a sprint, not a marathon. I look forward to seeing you in the next video.